I am going to be doing Mob Psycho 100 anime episode reviews. Mob Psycho Episode 1, Mob Psycho 100 Episode 5, Mob Psycho 100 Episode 8,
Mob Psycho 102, Episode 1. Back at it once again with another late night Mob Psycho 102 reactions. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh my god. This is so sick. So it has certainly been a long time coming. The final season of Mob Psycho has finally begun. Mob Psycho 103. I like this episode. It feels like we're kind of just back into the thick of things, right? We're just kind of back in. Now, full disclosure, I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. I had not finished season 2 until just last night. I was reviewing this show at the time of season 2's airing, and some life-altering events happened, and I had to move, and it was all this big drama, and I wasn't able to finish the show. And by the time I was able to actually sit down and watch it, I was already so far removed from it. I wasn't currently on YouTube at the time, so I didn't have the motivation to go back. And leading up until now, I had to watch it, and it was legit 2 or 3 episodes, and if you know season 2, shit really starts getting crazy around that point. So I actually just finished season 2 this morning, basically. I stayed up super late and watched 9 episodes in a row after work, mind you. And the way that this episode, I'm really glad I did, by the way. I would have done it regardless, just to probably not stay up that late, but I would have done it regardless just to get caught up into the world of Mob Psycho. The way season 2 ends and the way this one begins feels like there was never a break, That was almost 3 years ago when Mob Psycho 2 ended. It doesn't feel at all like there's been a break. It feels like we're just right back in. And I think season 2 was the same way for season 1. We kind of just picked things up again. I think this is set mere days after the events of season 2. And the giant broccoli thing is there. The town is kind of just gawking and wondering what the hell is going on. And I find that really interesting and humorous. I really, really like this episode because it feels like Mob Psycho. It feels like Mob Psycho is back and we're just doing our normal shenanigans. But there is some underlining themes that are happening throughout this episode that I think are more than just bits. I do think that there is some interesting character development here. With Mob, especially. With Shigeo, I think that it's obviously very relatable, right? A lot of us in high school, a lot of us in middle school didn't know what the hell we were going to do with our lives and that sort of thing. And that's a very common theme in youth, not knowing where to go next, not knowing what to do next. I kind of like that turmoil within Mob and not knowing this. Not necessarily stressing about it, but just being just curious, being generally curious about the idea of staying with Reigen, the idea of going to some fancy school. There's different episodes and a whole different series that kind of veers in those directions. If Mob decided to go to Tsubomi school and wanted to study and become stronger in the field of academics, that's an entirely different season there, right? That's an entirely different show of him trying to get smarter, similar to how he wanted to get stronger, and I think that could have been really interesting, but we see him fall back on Reigen and say, hey, I'm just gonna stay here for now and we'll see what happens, basically. And I really dig that. I really dig Reigen's message at the end of this episode too. I can feel that, because life isn't like that. You can't plan out everything. You don't know what you want at this certain age. We live to 70 or 80, and to plan everything out at the age of 13 is kind of absurd, and I think Reigen was trying to express that to Mob because his life was full of change and full of on-the-whim decisions, essentially. So this episode actually had a lot of really funny bits, in my opinion. The episode begins with the whole doll thing. May I say, I actually really, really like Seruzawa. I really, really like this character. I loved him in season 2. I loved he was this bridge between the main villain and Mob. He was sort of this way into Mob sympathizing for him or understanding this villain, and I really, really dug Seruzawa in the second season. Here, he definitely feels like a very different, he looks entirely different, for sure. He's definitely kind of falling for Reigen, basically. He's got the similar outfit, similar haircut, he's definitely kind of like a disciple, and he's already sort of starting to respect him, and in a similar sense of where Mob was, but I'm really, really curious where his character goes. I'm very, very curious if there's more development there, or is he just going to be this kind of helping hand throughout the season? Is he just going to be kind of in the background and doing his own thing? It doesn't really feel like that, because by the end of this episode, Serizawa is making big realizations as well. He's understanding that where his life is now, after talking to the 50-year-old that's basically done nothing with his life, him being 30, him being a shut-in, or was a shut-in, was a hikikomori, and now he's sort of not, he's living his life now and helping people. And I love how Mob was like, the more people you see, the more you will learn. Like, this is just the beginning. You will learn more from these clients as time goes on. And I really, really dug that too. This episode was very positive to me. A lot of positive reinforcement of Mob as a character, of Serizawa, even a little bit of Reigen, and even the viewer, I would say. Even the viewer. I think there was a lot of, hey, chill. Don't worry about your future so much. I mean, definitely plan things out if you can, but if you can't, just live in the now, Let's just try to be happy. And I dug that sort of message of the episode. Now, the episode did have a ton of great bits. I love, obviously, the rice thing with the doll. That, to me, was like one of the funniest moments of the entire episode. Even when the doll initially breaks, I thought was very, very funny. Interesting, like, it's never, so season 2, it's never 100% confirmed that Mob knows that Reigen has no psychic ability. I think it's just kind of like, we know that Mob knows, and I think Reigen knows that Mob knows, but they don't ever really say anything. There was an episode of season 2 where Reigen literally asked Mob, hey, like, so you know what I am, right? You know I'm a con man, essentially. And he's like, yeah, I do know. You're a wonderful man. You're very smart. He says something along those lines. And I don't know. I really don't know, why are we still humoring Mob there? I'm very, very curious. And why would we humor Serizawa? I don't know. I find that very, very interesting, and I wonder if Serizawa will eventually learn, or I really don't. Maybe Mob talked to Serizawa and said, like, hey, dude, by the way, Reigen is not a psychic. I doubt a conversation like that happened. I definitely think Reigen is sort of selling the message, right? He's definitely selling the message that he is a psychic with this meeting with the guy with the doll, the cursed doll or whatever. I really, really dug that interaction. Again, I love the rice bit. Just the arm falling off is super, super funny to me. And then we have the big sort of event of the episode was this gross hikikomori dude that shut in himself in this basically garbage shrine. I really, really dug the interactions between Mob, Serizawa, and this old man, and even Reigen as well. Just that whole meeting in this, like, woe is me vibe that was going on there. He created a wraith of himself. Does he have psychic abilities? I believe they confirmed he was not possessed. I'm not really sure what a wraith is. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, this guy's disgusting. There's roaches all over. The bits in this episode I thought were very, very funny. The aerosol spinning around and then spraying disinfectant spray I thought was really, really funny. And yeah, roaches are terrifying. I could not sit more than 2 minutes in that room. Like, no thank you. No thank you at all. The visual gags in this episode were fantastic. I loved the sort of academic level of all of the students. Each time it would show a student, it would show their academic level. Surprised to see Mob, like, not too terrible, right? He's at 150. He's kind of in the middle of the road, which I think is the point. Really, really dug the telepathy club and sort of their plans and how they were talking about their future and how they are kind of the worst kid students in the entire school, to be honest with you. I also really love the body improvement club and how they were talking about their future too. Like, one of them wanted to be a vet. One is working on a farm. Onigawara, he's going to become a mangaka and didn't want to share that with anyone for some reason. And I thought that was really, really funny. That was a really good gag. I love the paper as well, just constantly going back to this paper. And I actually thought they did a really good job of translating that paper as well, just literally having the full paper there. Like, hey, this is everything on here. I haven't seen something like that in a localization. I think that is kind of it. I've seen, like, obviously the translations in the series has done that, but, like, no, let's just take the whole thing and just make our own version of it on the side of the screen here. I found that kind of fascinating. Again, I'm sure series have done this in the past. I found it really interesting. All right, so obviously predictions, I don't really know. This is very early. Mob Psycho, it's one of these kinds of shows that the first couple of episodes typically don't really have too much to do with the overarching story, aside from a couple of the themes that are at play And the themes here is Mob growing, Mob coming into himself and trying to understand his emotions and trying to understand who he's becoming, basically. And I think that is going to continue throughout this series, which is great. I think there's a lot of interesting things to do there. I really hope they kind of develop Tsubomi a little bit. Tsubomi knows that Mob does have psychic abilities, right? He saw her put the story back together when it was ripped to shreds by those bully girls. He put this giant novel back together with his psychic abilities, and she was just there, and she said, nice. Or smooth move, or something like that. And I'm really curious, like, is Tsubomi somebody, or is she just going to be this character that Mob is in love with, basically, or crushing on? Is she actually going to become a character? Something interesting is going to happen there. I really don't know. I'm really, really curious. I really hope so. I really hope they develop Tsubomi a little bit more. She's cute, right? I dig her character, I dig her vibe, but like I don't know who she is, and it would be interesting if she had some importance in terms of Mob being a psychic. I think that's kind of interesting. So we'll definitely have to see what goes on there. Dimple in this episode, I think, makes a big realization. It's kind of behind in the background of things, right? He's kind of gone in this entire episode. He's in the beginning, but then Mob asks him, like, what do you want to do, in the future? And he's like, oh shit, I forgot what I was here for. I forgot what I was trying to do. And that is, right, take over the world, or possess Mob, or become the most powerful religious figure. I'm not sure 100% what exactly his goal is at this point in the story. But at the end of this episode, he goes on top of the giant broccoli. Love the broccoli, by the way. Love the broccoli. I didn't get a chance to talk about season 2, as I mentioned, the end of season 2. That whole, obviously, like, I could get insanely in depth with the animation. We'll have to talk about season 2 as a whole eventually further down the line. But the whole broccoli thing and how that callback and how that worked, the seeds in his pocket, and now there's a giant piece of broccoli in the city. Really, really love that aesthetically. Really, really love the vibe of that. It definitely brings a lot of character to the overall town, and I really, really dig that. But anyway, yeah, we see Dimple resting on top of this broccoli, and it's like, okay, it's time. It's time to make my move, basically. And I'm curious, like, Mob Psycho definitely likes to do a lot of fake outs, right? Like, oh shit, is Dimple gonna be evil? I don't know. Like, Mob Psycho definitely does that quite a lot throughout the entire series. It's been doing it since the first season. It's been doing it since, like, episode 5 of the first season. These, like, is Mob dead? Did Reagan die? Is Reagan a psychic? Is Mob's entire family dead? They definitely have done that quite a bit. I'm really, really curious, like, is Dimple going to pose a threat? Interesting, when season 2 ends, like, Claw is completely disbanded and gone, right? Claw is gone. And in the opening, we don't see... I'll have to rewatch the opening. Not the biggest fan of the opening, by the way. I definitely dig the song. I think the visuals are definitely the least interesting in comparison to season 1 and 2. I think opening 3 feels like a regular anime opening, whereas season 2 and 1 feel very special and very, very interesting. It's not a terrible opening. It'll definitely grow on me, but not quite my favorite. Anyway, I'm jumping all over the place here. I don't know who Dimple is going to become in this season. I'm curious if he's going to pose a bigger threat later. And, like, is there going to be a big baddie this season as well? And does Dimple take the form of that? I'm not quite sure, and I'm really, really curious and excited to find out. Long story short, this was a good episode. It was a fun time. There's not a ton to grab onto, right? It's not like a riveting piece of fiction here. It is a chill, relaxing episode that introduces some thematical elements to the overarching story. And I really dug it. That's all it needed it to be. That's how Mob Psycho does things, and it did it quite well here. Comment below, give me your thoughts on this week's episode of Mob Psycho 100. It has been so long since I've talked about this series on the channel. This was one of the first series this is the first series I ever covered on this channel. My first year of being a YouTuber, back in 2016, believe it or not. This series, I can't believe it's been going on that long. It feels good to talk about it again. It feels, I don't know, special in some way to be talking about this series again. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. It just felt right. So here I am doing it. Let's see how this thing goes. Comment below and give me your thoughts on this week's episode of Mob Psycho. Thank you very, very much for liking and commenting and, of course, subscribing. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, party on.